Welcome to the Dough Roller Money Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Berger. Today in episode 335, I'm going to respond to a new listener's question, and it has to do with credit cards and credit card rewards and my system for saving them. And so let's get right to it, and let me read you the question. It comes from a listener named Adam. He says, hope you and your family are staying safe during these crazy times. I recently came across Dough Roller and have been listening to your podcast, signed up for the newsletter, and joined the Facebook group. I should stop there. If you haven't joined the Facebook group, you should. doughroller.net/Facebook group. I think we have about 7 billion people in the group right now. Could be a few less than that, something like that. And it's a great group. All right. He goes on. You could say I'm borderline obsessed with the idea of financial freedom. I thought he was going to say with the Dough Roller Money Podcast, but whatever. Okay. I wanted to reach out and ask a question regarding something you mentioned in a recent podcast, number 328, regarding moving money from checking to savings and how it's tied to your credit card rewards. I know you said in the episode it would be saved for a later day, but I was genuinely curious how you linked the two together and what your overall strategy is on how you execute this. Well, so glad you asked. And in fact, for those watching the video of this show, you see on the screen my portfolio in M1 Finance. Now, as longtime listeners know, I'm a big Vanguard fan, and I'm even to some extent a Fidelity fan. Have accounts at both. But for my credit card rewards, I decided, I would just pretend like I was a millennial and I would open up an M1 Finance account. I suppose I could have gone with Robinhood too, but they push crypto and commodity investing and margin lending so much that I just can't support it. That's my view. Anyway, so I opened up an account at M1 Finance, and the idea was I could take, as I'll explain my process in a moment in answer to Adam's question, I can invest all of my credit card rewards. I'll keep it separate from my other investments. Of course, I could have done that at Fidelity or Vanguard as well, but it'll keep it separate from all my other investments. And, I can invest in some other things. I could just put it in an index fund, and that would have been a perfectly sound and smart and reasonable thing to do. Well, when I started out, it was a relatively small amount of money. Depending on where you are in your journey on financial freedom, it still is, or it's all the money in the world, as you can see on the screen. And for those listening, my account balance is now $10,592.86. And my return is actually off. I've lost about just under 5%. I'll explain that in a minute. And that is all from credit card rewards. It's not from, monitoring my budget and making sure I don't overspend at the grocery store or whatever the case may be. It's all from credit card rewards and cashback sites like Rakuten. I also have Mr. Rebates. And I did this for a couple of reasons, but mainly it was so I could get on my podcast like this or my YouTube channel and tell people, look, yes, you can save small amounts of money, and over time it turns into a pile of cash, and you can get creative with how you come up with those small amounts of money. You can do the money audit, which we've talked about, and I've had people email me and tell me they've saved a fortune by raising the deductible on their car insurance or changing companies, comparison shopping with car insurance, finding better deals on their cell phone, getting rid of cable and replacing it with Sling TV or YouTube TV, which, by the way, YouTube TV's prices just keep going up and up, driving me crazy. Anyway, there's all kinds of ways to save money without sacrifice. That's sort of the idea. We all know we can quote, I call it quote unquote sacrifice, because I think a lot of times what we think is a sacrifice, if we actually, whatever that might be, eat out less, sell one of our cars, whatever, seems like a horrible sacrifice. If we do it, we may find out that we don't miss it at all. In fact, as an example, we got rid of our second car. Now it's been over a year ago. And I wasn't sure how that would go. And we don't miss it at all. And we're perfectly fine with one car. And if we had missed it and we did need a second car, I'd go and buy one. Anyway, how you save without sacrifice. I think there's a lot of ways to do it. But if we're going to save with sacrifice, you don't need me to tell you not to eat out as much or, scale back your vacation plans. Not like any of us are going on vacation anytime soon. But, we can all figure that out on our own. But I think the idea here was, how can we save in ways that doesn't change our lifestyle? And even if it seems like relatively small amounts of money, it's going to add up over time. The key is, this is critical, you got to make sure that whatever money you've saved from credit card rewards in this case, or from changing your car insurance or whatever, you actually save. If you don't do anything with it, it just stays in your checking account and just becomes part of your budget. You're going to spend it and you're not going to know where in the world it went. All right, so back to credit cards. My approach is pretty simple. As a general rule, I will use a cashback credit card when it makes sense. There are a couple exceptions, but I use the Alliant Credit Union credit card. I use the Citi Double Cash credit card. I use Amazon Prime. Those are my three main cashback cards. Amazon Prime gives me 5% cash back at Whole Foods and on Amazon. Citi Double Cash effectively gives you 2%, 1% when you buy, 1% when you pay the credit card bill. And Alliant gives you 2.5%, but there is an annual fee, and it does cap it at $10,000 a month, a cap that I hope not to exceed most months. But the long and short of it is, between those three cards, I'm getting probably about 2.5% to 3% a month, and it averages out that way, and that's pretty extraordinary, really. And it's cash, so I can log in, take the cash. In some cases, like with Alliant, I have to apply it to the outstanding balance, which gets to Adam's question. Money is fungible. That's fine. If I have $200 in cashback rewards that I have to apply to the account, I apply it to the account, and I just take $200 out of my checking account that I would have used to pay the credit card bill, and I transfer it to my M1 Finance account. It's pretty simple. Same thing with Amazon Prime. I actually can just pull the cash out for that, and Citi Double Cash will just mail you a check or do a direct deposit if you bank with Citibank, and it's pretty easy. So that's what I do with the cashback cards. It goes right from, in this case, credit card companies, either directly or, again, I use it to pay the credit card bill and then just take the same amount out of my checking account, and I transfer. It doesn't go to a savings account. I transfer it directly to M1 Finance. So it gets a little more interesting with travel reward cards. So I carry the Chase Sapphire Reserve card. It pays 3x back on 3x back on restaurants and travel. And when I use those rewards for travel, I get 50% bonus. So effectively, it's a 4.5% rewards card. Again, you got to use the points for travel. And so that's why I use it for eating out, which we're not doing much of right now, and travel. Then the question is, all right, but I've got to use it for travel in order to get that extra 50%. How do I get that into my M1 Finance account? That's the tricky part. So what I do is I simply take the value of the travel, what I would have paid in cash had I not used Chase points, and take that money out of my checking account and put it in M1 Finance. So effectively what I'm doing is I'm paying myself, if you will, rather than paying the car rental company, the hotel, the airline. Now, some would say, well, I might not be able to take travel if I do that. I kind of rely on my points to travel in situations where I otherwise couldn't. And I get that. And so this may not be for you. But one thing I found that's interesting is it does affect how I travel. Some people, I love the Instagram pictures where people use all these Chase reward points or Amex points to fly first class. So they take a picture of themselves holding their champagne, in this luxurious first class seat where they're flying, and it's 8 hours. And I've flown first class. It's nice. I won't lie. But it's 8 hours of your life. What the picture they don't show you is when the trip's over and they're back in their cubicle working, although again, I guess we're all at home now, but in normal times, doing the 9 to 5 grind that they don't love. And I'm thinking, you could have flown coach and taken the money that would have cost you and invested it, and I don't know, maybe achieve financial freedom. But I sound so judgmental at this point. In any event, this is what I do. What you do is totally up to you. Then the last piece of it, as I mentioned, I use Rakuten when it makes sense, and Mr. Rebates. And so whenever I get cash back from an online site like that, it goes into the M1 Finance account as well. I've been doing this for about a year and a half or so. And as you can see, I've got $10,592, and let's not forget 86 cents. I also, by the way, have about $1,000 worth of Chase points. That I don't move it over to M1 Finance until I actually use them, and we're doing so little travel at the moment, that I just haven't used them. But when I do, they'll end up in the M1 Finance account. So I really have about $11,600 worth of total value in this. Again, 1,000 of it hasn't been converted yet, and it underscores how, one, we can get creative with our finances so that we can save money without sacrifice. It also shows to me how relatively small amounts of money can build up over time. So now we've got a 5-figure portfolio. And I suspect if the day comes when I start a podcast like this, welcome to the Door Roll of Money podcast. I'm your host, Rob Berger. Today in episode 573, I'm guessing I'll have $100,000 in this account. I wonder if any of you will still be listening. We'll see. All right. Now, how do I invest it? Well, here you can just stick in an index fund. I mean, S&P 500, whatever. The way M1 Finance works, you create these financial pies and individual stocks or ETFs. I could put in a Vanguard ETF in here. I guess are slices of the pie. I don't know. And if you see this on the screen, you can see I've got banks. So I think banks are a good investment, notwithstanding all the red for the money I've lost. But I own PNC, JP Morgan Chase, and Wells Fargo. Basically, these are just large banks that are well capitalized, and I think undervalued, certainly for long-term investors. When I say something's undervalued, I mean in relation to intrinsic value. It doesn't mean that the stock won't go down more. And these could certainly go down more. If I had to guess, I would say we're in for a lot more financial pain because of COVID-19. And I think banks are going to have a very difficult time. They have to estimate loan losses, and they write those off, right? It comes out of their earnings in the month that they increase their loan loss reserves. And they did that all in the last reporting period. I want to say Chase reserved $9 billion, but I could have that number wrong. But the problem is it's very difficult to predict. It's difficult to predict loan loss reserves in good times, or in normal times, I should say. It's incredibly difficult to predict it now. And so I think banks could be in for a lot more financial pain, but I think they can weather the storm. And I think 10 years from now, I'll be very happy that I bought banks today. That's my opinion. I will say is my portfolio on the whole, as you know, is index funds. But I do have some individual stocks. It's funny, one that I own is Apple. And it's gone up so much over the time that I've owned it that it's actually become a pretty significant part of my portfolio. I would say on the order of like 15%, which isn't really what I would have intended. But I suppose it's a good problem to have. And although this podcast will probably get published in a couple of weeks, yesterday they announced their latest quarter results, and they were like not unlike Amazon's. They were just off the charts. So I think Apple's going to be up we'll see. In after hours trading, they were up like 4 or 5%. So just create more headache for me. Anyway, so yeah, I have all this invested in banks. And I think, again, 10 years from now, they'll be good investments. They will have proven to be sound investments. They're not going to grow like an Amazon or an Apple. They're banks. But I think they could do quite well. Time will tell. So, Adam, I hope that answers your question. That's my approach. Here you can see on the screen my results. And I'll, every now and again, maybe once a quarter, I'll mention this in a show and show you how it's coming along. I should add one last thing. I move the credit card rewards over to M1 Finance usually once a month. You could even do it once a quarter. Part of it depends on how much I've accumulated in the account. If it's just a few bucks, I might not bother with it. In some cases, you need to accumulate $25 before you can transfer something over. I think that's the case with Citi Double Cash, and that's fine. So sometimes it might be on a quarterly basis. Depends how frequently I use that credit card. Well, there you go, Adam. Hope that answers your question. And if folks have more questions, probably the easiest way is to put them in the Facebook group. Even if I don't see it, you're going to get 20 or 30 good answers pretty quickly. So if you haven't joined the Facebook group, you should. doorroller.net/Facebook group. And that's all I got for you today. I hope you're hanging in there. Hope you're staying safe. I'm following, by the way, the craziness in Washington over the next round of COVID-19 relief. So you can check that out. I tend to write that content on Forbes. I don't always drop the articles into the Facebook group. Maybe I should. I do put them in on Twitter and on my own personal Facebook page. But maybe I'll start dropping them in the Dough Roller Facebook group as well. But yeah, I've been tracking all the legislation. By the way, the more I study it, the less confidence I have that I have a clue what's going to happen. I mean, it really is just bizarro world in Washington right now. But, in fairness, this could be a whole other podcast. In fairness, I get it. I mean, because on the one hand, people are suffering. We're in unprecedented times. And, we want to help people, we being just the collective we. At the same time, we're spending tons of money in Washington. I mean, the latest Republican proposal is $1 trillion. That used to be a lot of money. The latest Democratic proposal on the House side is $3 trillion. We ought not spend any of that kind of money lightly. So part of me is kind of glad that they're fighting about it. They should be fighting about it. This shouldn't be easy. God help us if it's ever easy to spend $1 or $3 trillion. That's just my opinion. Anyway, I am writing about that stuff, not from the political side. I try to stay out of the who's right, who's wrong, because you can go to Twitter if you want that kind of stuff, or Reddit. I don't know, but more just here's what's happening. Here's the deal. Here's the HEROES Act in the House. Here's the HEALS Act in the Senate. 4 Republican senators, including Senator Rubio and Romney, just came out with another plan that's just focused on stimulus checks. They want to give $1,000 out, basically to everybody. So it's less than the $1,200 in the CARES Act, except that the $1,000 would also apply to dependents. So it would actually end up being more money for like a family of 4, for example, or a single parent with multiple children would actually get more under their plan than they did the CARES Act. In any event, it's a fast-moving situation. So you can check that content out if you want to, but I am keeping track of all of that. All right, I think I've said enough. Hope you have a great week. Until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.